Bernd, thank you very much. And thank you, Anita, reminding 6G as a turbo of 5G. We've been talking about that because Gerhard Fettweis said all the uneven numbers are for the industry and the even numbers are for the consumer. And that's what mass market means. So 2G has been for the mass market, 4G is for the mass market, 6G maybe will be for the mass market. But today we're talking about industry. That's our last official panel today. And first I want to invite Cigdem Mareski on the stage. She is head of the customer project management team B2B for technology solutions at Telefonica O2. Please choose your seat wherever you want. The second one is, I've got to go alphabetically right now, Professor Dr. Christoph Thümmler. He's Chief Medical Officer for the 6G Health Institute. So we are entering the health business with him. Warm welcome. And last but not least, Joe Wilke, Head of Center of Excellence for Industry 4.0 at Ericsson. Joe, please join us. So I did the introduction, but I think it's better for all the audience to explain in short sentences what you're doing in general, and especially maybe in the context with e-health. And let's start with you, Cigdem.
Yes. As you told, I'm head of customer project management in technology department. So my responsibility is the implementation of B2B network solutions in front of the customer, and their private 5G is one part, SD-WAN is another part, and yeah, it covers different kind of technology. Today, focusing on private 5G, my project managers handle different kind of customers across the industry. So medical is one part, and of course we did also industry with one bigger project, commercial one, for Princeton, for example. This is why Joe is here as the system integrator for Princeton. And of course, in terms of R&D, we did some projects with TU München, we did projects with Dataport. So what I bring today is the experience which we have gained in front of the customer regarding private 5G.
Thank you very much. So we best switch to you, because you can first explain Princeton, the Princeton project, from the Ericsson point of view, and then we have a slide over to eHealth.
Okay, so that means I don't have to explain Ericsson.
A little bit. What is it all about?
So I think many of you know Ericsson. So Ericsson is a company like almost 150 years old. So it existed before 1G, if you want to call it like this. And of course, in the past decades, there was a lot of focus from Ericsson to serve like mobility and cellular networks, so from 1G to 5G, so to say. And so for, let's say, the past 5 or 6 years, my role was very much to lead this organization that has this difficult title of Center of Excellence 5G Industry 4.0. And it looks at many verticals like manufacturing, mining, also healthcare, oil and gas, renewable energies, and so on and so forth. And we basically try to do what the title says. We are trying to develop that business on the intersection of Industry 4.0 transformation and 5G. So with regards to Princeton, as Cigdem already mentioned, we have been partnering up between Telefonica, Ericsson, and Princeton to actually develop such a private network in Austria in this case. And my organization's role is very much to, first of all, kind of engage with the customers and with Telefonica to understand let's say, the why. So we have been talking so much today about the what and how, but we usually start with the why. I think that's very important. So what's the overall purpose? To then also figure, what should we actually do? And in that case, it turned out actually pretty quickly to go for a private network on their quite big campus. This is, I think, 100,000 square meters.
How much?
100,000 square meters,
okay.
Indoor and outdoor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually can't, but I know that people always translate it to soccer fields. I don't know how many it is. It's big, and it's a mix of outdoor and indoor, meaning it's also good showcase that private doesn't necessarily mean it's indoor only. So it's a mix of indoor and outdoor. And the company Prinzon is very advanced in use cases that are around automatically guided vehicles. This is what some refer to as a use case cluster of intralogistics, meaning how do I get things from A to B within my constrained area, so to say. We also see the demand of Prinzon as we see it as a pattern for many in this vertical, so to say, that they want to kind of keep all their data on their premise. And that translates into, like in our language, onto the requirement to have a so-called local breakout function, meaning we allow basically to break out the data on their premise from the cellular network to their IT and OT environment. And with that, fulfill both the requirements on how to deal with data, but also on the characteristics that is necessary for those networks when it comes to short latency, as we have heard so many times today that many go for 5G as latency is very short and helps, for example, for these automatically guided vehicles. As an addition to that, when we developed the project, as Cigdem already said, we also can help to integrate. But I'm saying to help because our focus is very much, of course, on the connectivity side. We heard other speakers today that take also like a greater integration into IT environments, and so this is maybe not our core business, so we focus on the connectivity, and we have defined, could say, interface points at those local breakout functions to actually connect to IT and OT of that company, in this case, Prinzon. And Prinzon itself, I think, is in a way also a forerunner in this industry, so they have been using let's say, the network for really commercial use cases. That does also mean if the network is not available, there's a problem for us, and of course also for the customer. So it's really serious. And also what I think is very important, also maybe reflecting a bit on the day, that there is of course a lot of, let's say, pressure for innovation. There's a need for innovation, and Prinzon could also show that 5G is actually a good platform for innovation. So they have developed use cases that weren't defined at the beginning, but could be developed on that 5G private network as a platform once it was delivered. Maybe also reflecting then on the, if I'm speaking too much, you need to stop me. Right? Yeah. No, I just wanted to build the bridge.
2 hours left.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wanted to build the bridge because I found it interesting as we started the day with Malik's, okay, he isn't there anymore, with Malik's speech on, what's actually the best of both worlds if you look into private and public networks. And in this industry that I'm speaking about, we see very much that the starting point is a private and almost, or you could actually say an isolated network. Whereas we see other verticals and other use cases that are best served with actually this mix of both public and private. And that maybe builds the bridge also to the health, e-health business, that a lot of the use cases do actually not happen by purpose, do not happen on the premise of a hospital or of a healthcare company, so to say. They happen out in the field, they happen where people are, and that already kind of explains why there is such an innovation pressure in this vertical to actually find this nice mix between when to use a private network, when to use a public network, and how to build use cases that combine the two.
And just one sentence. And what we also experience is last year was the year of POCs. So across the industry, we did a lot of proof of concepts. This year, customers are much more courage It's more about commercial projects, and it's more about different technologies. So what we from Telefonica offer are, of course, different kind of architecture models. We have the closed one. With TU München, we have the core in our environment in Freimann. And now handing over to Christoph, where we are building within a lab environment network slicing based on an in-house infrastructure. It's Nokia 5G SA. Hand over.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe mentioned the automotive industry, and you told me there's one industry much bigger, and that's not into the focus right now, and that's the health industry. What's your role in this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the health industry is very big. It's much bigger than the automotive industry. So roughly in Europe, you're talking about 12% of the GDP that goes into health. In America, you're talking about more than 20% that is going into health. In China, you're talking about more than 5% of the GDP that is going into health. So all in all, you're talking about a very big market. And also the market, you can see that every day in the newspaper, has a lot of issues caused by demographics, socioeconomic issues. There's huge costs involved. There is also all the issues involved that we've been discussing through the day. So the lack of workforce, the lack of nurses, the lack of money. There's discussion about closing down hospitals. We have the demographic situation, not only in Europe, but the same in the United States, even in China. So there is a huge boost, and there is more and more consciousness that we need strong automation in this sector, simply to guarantee that we can provide the care on a level that it is in the moment. So I'm not talking about increase in effectiveness and efficiency. Of course, these are all things we're hoping for. But in the moment, transformation of the health domain is about bare survival of the status quo. So there will be no choice, and there will be hardly any discussion. This all needs to become more automated, and I believe that mobile technology is playing a huge role with that. So my job is, I'm a chief medical officer of a small research institute in Leipzig, here in Saxony. We have around 20 people, and we are looking at ways to enhance the service provision in the health domain, enhance effectiveness and efficiency by introducing mobile technology at various points of the value chain into the health domain. I have been a physician over more than 30 years of my life, but my academic interest has always been on this topic of digitalization, mobile communication, ever since the late 90s. And so this is what we're doing in Leipzig, and hence why I think this is an excellent discussion here. It's an excellent forum. Very grateful for the invitation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. In preparation of this panel, I've been thinking about health, e-health, and one of the big showcases has been diagnostics with a distance of 1,000 kilometers and telesurgery and so on. But that's not the way you think. You think there are other opportunities, maybe even faster opportunities, more relevant. Yeah. Can you give us some impressions? What are the big winners of for the health industry by implementing 5G technology?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we discussed that today at several points, and of course, looking into remote surgery or looking into 5G in the emergency physician's car and the ambulance and so on, they're interesting research topics. I can look into that and I can ask myself, okay, you know, what would be if in maybe 10 years' time or so, I could operate over a distance of 1,000 kilometers? Or what would be if every ambulance had a 5G kind of technology included? But then again, on the other hand, I have to ask myself, okay, how many SIM cards, how many connections are we talking here? 1,000, 1,200, maybe, yeah, in Europe, in Germany, I don't know. On the other hand, we have far more striking problems. I was just talking about, for example, nurse time, nurse hours, and as a practitioner, allow me, to give you an example from the hospital. I mean, you all know that. You've been in the hospital yourself or relatives, and you have machines, peripheral machines, IoTs working in the hospital like infusion pumps or syringe drivers and all of these kind of things. Now, you might know that or not, but none of these devices, nowhere, is network capable. Yeah? All of these devices are island solutions. They have analog serial interfaces, optical cables, stuff nobody can do anything with. But because we cannot monitor these devices, we have to send in a nurse on a routine basis every so often to see, is the truck running properly? Is there kinking in the hose? Is the machine running? Is the plug still in the wall in the outlet? Is something going on? Yeah? And I think these are very low-hanging fruits because it's very simple. On a ward, you might have 26 rooms with 52 patients, and each nurse has to spend maybe 10 minutes per patient to check for these devices. If you calculate that, you're simply coming very fast into the hours, right? And now just imagine what would happen if these devices could be just easily connected in some kind of network. But this is only half the truth, because think further. What we're doing in the moment, there's a huge drive towards distributed patient-centric care. What does that mean? It means simply we do not have the hospital beds anymore to put everybody into hospital and follow our strategy from the 20th century. If you are ill, you go into the hospital. Huh? It's not going to happen anymore. So more and more people will be treated at home, and they will take devices from the hospital outside to wherever they are treated. I have Wi-Fi in the hospital, but this does not really fit the bill here, right? There needs to be roaming, needs to be auto configuration, and all of these kind of things. So I believe there is an excellent case for mobile technology, just looking into this, and I could give you 5, 6, 7 more examples, where on the one hand, the enhancement of the quality of care plays a role for the patient, for the doctor, for the nurse, and so forth, where there is a business case for all parties included in this value chain, and which can really enhance and transform the health domain in the next years, not in 10 years or decades to come or something like that, but now, very soon.
What do you think, how long will it take until you have all the connected devices, these infusion pumps that you mentioned? How long does it take? 10 years? 15? 5?
It can go very fast. It was said earlier on, it's all about adoption, right? And it's true, it's all about adoption. And to be honest with you, without mourning me here, the health domain was left behind. Yeah? When 5G, PPP started, everybody was looking on automotive, and everybody was looking at fintech, and everybody was looking at automation and the smart factory and so on. Nobody did care about healthcare. And this is a problem now, because there's hardly anything in a hospital or in a healthcare system that is network enabled at all using mobile technology. Also not 2G, not 4G, not 5G. And I think this is only a question now how we can manage to enhance the adoption. And then I think if this starts, this will go very fast.
Do you agree that the telecommunications industry has forgotten the health sector, or has automotive been the lower hanging fruit to pick? Or what's the reason why, or do you see it totally different?
I think it always depends on the push from the customer also. So it's vice versa. For me personally, there's no difference. And most of the problems are the same. So less employers, need for automation, etc. So this is something I would not agree, Christoph, that the industry has forgot. I think it's vice versa. And what I see right now, I mean, 6G Health Institute is not the only customer in the healthcare. We have others as well. Is especially in the R&D area of healthcare, there's huge demand regarding private networks, where I get asked, and we have already deployed also in some hospitals.
But it could be a big business behind the business. So if you're building the private or the sliced network to sell your SIM cards or your eSIMs, so it's getting bigger then, isn't it?
Yes, Christoph always mentions, if, for example, all medical devices gets a SIM card, there's huge potential behind, of course. Right now, it's more planning, building, running, and it's the managed service which gives us, or which makes our business cases green, and of course, added with use case implementation, etc. Yeah. But I think this is a market still in medical care which starts now, but which will scale, and I agree with you, very fast if prerequisites are already fine, done.
Okay, and if you're talking to your customer and it comes to whether I use a network slice or whether I build a whole private network, where are the limitations and recommendations?
Well, right now it always depends on the use case. We do the discussion in the front. This is first. The second is the area. Sometimes we have a smaller area where we do recommend just a small installation, or like with Prinzhorn, we have a very wide area, indoor and outdoor, with very critical use cases demanding low latency or high data volume. And in terms of slicing, this is something we do right now in lab environment. And the reason for that was the combination of indoor and outdoor based on the use cases Christoph has in mind. Yeah.
And that's what you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, we have some experience with single standing solutions, 5G private networks. We implemented a rather big one in Leipzig. And while I'm very fond of these systems, we found, and this is the experience we gained with that, we found that for us the biggest problem is the lack of roaming. So we are caught in this, admittingly safe and secure environment, but we are caught in that. That means we cannot exchange data, we cannot roam, we cannot move outside the given space. And so I believe, and this is what Malik said this morning, I totally agree with that, we will see more and more mergers coming up, hybrid systems. So I think the public slice will do the 99%, and we might need some kind of cloudified system or basically a trimmed down core that will manage the traffic inside the hospital if, for example, the public net should go down, because don't forget, hospitals are critical infrastructures. That means they have to work under any circumstance. And I think it's very important, but this is the development work, we're seeking to do, right?
Yeah, and what we do, and because of critical infrastructure, for example, for 6G HI, we build an in-house 5G SI, put a slice in, reserve 90% of the capacity, go to our core in Leipzig, and after that build a redundant connection IPsec to the data center. Yeah. This is more or less the architecture we are building. So redundancy is always key element, but I mean everywhere redundancy is key element. This is critical infrastructure, so it's something you plan in front, and it's daily business for a network provider.
And of course, we're talking about 5G for the industry, not only automotive, not only health industry. What are the next steps? What do you see as your next targets? Which industry sectors?
Well, logistics we did also. So in logistics, especially everything which needs mobility, and which needs speed. So warehousing, logistics is something. Public sector is coming.
Okay.
Right now in the market there are big tenders in terms of public tenders. R&D, always small ones. With TU München, we did an AGV use case also. Yeah, right now it is public and logistics additionally.
Yeah, look, I mean, so I think I maybe didn't say that in the beginning. So the organization that I'm heading is looking at Europe and Latin America. And I think actually in every country you would get a somewhat different answer to that question. Mm-hmm. So when we went to LATAM with our, Latin America with our offering, they of course understood this is for our mines. So there is a lot of mining use cases and actually big mines that take advantage of private networks. And that is also due to the different legislations on how do I acquire spectrum as like a mine operator, for example. And we know that in different countries there are different rules. Like in many countries in Latin America, you have this so-called secondary use option, meaning if there's a mine very remote where, let's say, a telco operator wouldn't bring a network because there is no business, that mine operator can actually acquire that spectrum and build an own private network to it. So, and mining is actually in that space and also in other spaces, like in Eastern Europe, Asia, and so, is a good business also. But it's also a very difficult business, I must say, as the requirements on the network are extremely high. We heard the example earlier today of emergency stops and how not fast that goes, meaning how big the interruption is. We see this in mines also that those underground mines, they actually have to be evacuated if the network isn't available anymore, and that's because of people safety, worker safety. So meaning in those mines we actually build systems that have a very big redundancy, which of course comes at the price, but it's still a business case. So a highly available network for the mine operations is actually also good business. Not so much in Germany, of course, but in other countries we see that. Also in Europe, and to some extent actually also in Germany, there is a movement in ports, port automation. Yeah. So big, like these are these big AGVs that are today electrically powered. So they have also intelligence on the edge that guide the AGVs in an optimal way. We made actually measurements in a research project that you save like 5 to 10% carbon emission just because the forklift doesn't drive anywhere where the wrong place is. So due to it being automated and always in real time mapped, so to say, on where to put which container, so to say, you have already this double effect that we have been speaking about so much today, that you have automation at the one hand, but also, I mean, in this case, not green production, but like carbon emission reduction. So these are ports, and they're extremely interested on this. Actually, the first project that I have, so to say, done in my job was actually the Rotterdam World Gateway, which is not Germany, but very nearby, at least where I live. I live in Aachen, that's the most western town of Germany. And we see it in many other places, Italy, UK, Belfast Harbour as an example. There's many harbours and ports that actually go and want private networks. Interesting part is that throughout those verticals is often very similar use case clusters. So how to get a thing from A to B is very similar, be it manufacturing or warehousing or ports or harbors. This is very similar, so this is, you could almost say this is a killer use case, because for some of the customers, this single use case actually makes the break, so to say, to a positive business case. And that's of course what we like, because that makes the decision very fast and easy for our customers, as compared to finding a whole suite of use cases that at the end, puts more pressure on that company to change. And we talked about velocity and how easy or not easy it is to change. And it also makes it more, let's say, more of a greater exposure, so to say, to a more diverse ecosystem. So we see, for example, that due to AGVs being killer applications, that actually a few weeks, only 2 or 3 weeks back, there was a press release from German company Grenzebach that had actually launched the first 5G native AGV. So meaning this what many were looking for since years and months, and had maybe in the meantime solved with, let's say, retrofit solutions where you put 5G like in a small gateway on an AGV, can now be solved organically. So we have this whole suite of AGVs, very small ones, very big ones, and we see a lot of investments into software solutions that actually optimize the routes of individual AGVs due to the knowledge you can acquire from the whole fleet. And that all this in real time, meaning you can also comply with rules and regulations with regards to worker safety, where you have this mixed environment of people and AGVs, and you can also avoid collisions between individuals in that fleet. So I think actually from the verticals that are typically discussed, it's actually same observation here as Cigdem said, that in many of those, the proof of concepts or technology validation, whatever name you want to give it, is over. So they are starting now with commercial operations. But we also see that between the different verticals, the starting point is different. So we discussed healthcare on low-hanging fruits, as you call it, Christoph. This can be a starting point. And then we see, like for example, in ports, there's actually a big upfront investment to get all these AGVs. I wouldn't call this a low-hanging fruit, but still a business case. And they also have different requirements on the network, or I made this example with mining, where you have extreme requirements on the network availability as such. Yeah.
Maybe it's a low-hanging fruit or high-hanging fruit, but it's a big fruit at all. So if I listen, 100,000 square meters, port, mining, automotive, health industry, could give the impression that it's just for the big wallet. So have you use cases for smaller companies too, or is it just for big industries?
Yeah. It's very interesting. It completely varies. We have, of course, the big ones with the big use cases, but we also have the small ones who really want to try out VR, AR. And also from the deployment or technical perspective, by the end, we want to serve all kind of different customers and also the very small ones with low budget.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So for that, for example, one thing, or we are right now evaluating, is the core platform in the cloud, where we talk with a startup, and this is something. Again, we're evaluating, but that could be something for the bakery, just sending 2 dots, 1 box, and he can install it by themselves, and you just take the customer and put or get capacity in the core in the cloud. So the platform business right now is also one part coming, or is also a part in private networks. And let's see when that will be commercial, but this is something we also see. Yeah.
Okay, and if I'm the owner of a small bakery, so my advantages are?
The use cases we are not, we didn't evaluate properly. I didn't talk to a bakery yet.
Okay,
okay. That's one solution for small business. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see what comes.
Okay. Okay.
But maybe I can add on to the bakery case, so to say. Like if you take maybe again that example on how to get things from A to B, like with AGVs and so, it's actually so that in the smaller enterprises, there are actually workers that are kind of transporting those lightweight goods like semmeln and so. Or actually we talked to chocolate factory as an example. So, and again, this AGV case is something that pretty quickly breaks actually the positive business case and makes investment. So I haven't spoken to bakery either, but I've spoken to chocolate factory of maybe smaller size, and they are seriously evaluating whether they should go for such a solution. Maybe also another viewpoint is that the bakery is the bakery, okay, but there is of course machines like ovens and so that require maintenance and repair. And then it's of course kind of pretty obvious, this combined with the shortage of experts and like maintenance personnel, that the case of AR/VR, meaning someone being remote to another person, is also very demanded. Okay. Meaning even if that 5G network is not for the, let's say, operations of the bakery itself, but for the repair and maintenance operations of the machines in the bakery, it could be very helpful. Then of course, as I think we said in the beginning, it requires of course some thinking on where to best start, what is the pain point that I want to address, what is the use case, and what is the business case behind it. So that requires some engagement, so to say, with the enterprises to actually understand what is their strategy, what is the biggest pain point, and how can we solve this. But the case of remote assistance, if you want to call it like this, is actually also very demanded. So we see bigger and smaller companies at the same time that are at least inquiring information and want to understand how a solution can look like. And we all have seen that Apple launched the AR/VR glasses, so they might become commodity soon. And again, if you have critical applications on it, they will again require a network that can actually deliver the capabilities that are required for those critical use cases with that device. And again, we speak 5G. I don't know which release. Maybe it's enough with R15 to start, because there's still some intelligence on the device itself. But I think this is the innovation wheel on which we are. I think that's also why it's so difficult for many speakers, including myself, to actually predict what comes next. What is, what is 6G as compared to 5G? I think it's very hard, and I'm always very careful to make these predictions, because once making a prediction, it always feels like no matter what we do, the outcome is already clear, and that is why I don't believe in. All of us here make an impact to that journey, meaning the destiny cannot be 100% clear. Plus, we have learned that the platform like 5G, they absorb at the one hand and also immerse into many other innovations that are maybe not triggered or have maybe not started by the telco industry, but by other industries, be it IT industry or neighboring industries, so to say, that it was always and is a strength of the 3G, 4G, 5G technologies, that they are able to kind of work nicely together with those new, let's say, capabilities like cloud, and now we talked a lot about AI and machine learning and so. And we should also not forget that, again, as we talked so much about today, that the technology that we produce is also it's a global technology. And that is because since 2G, that industry has actually managed to develop like communication platform that has seen a proliferation to basically every human on Earth. Like billions of people have a handset, mobile telephony as it started, mobile internet now. Next wave, billions of devices have been connected to it. And now this platform has, I think, the greatest reach of all. And that means any global challenge we want to fight against is of course, let's say, is of course invited to come on that platform to actually help. And we talked about climate change, and there's many other, access to education systems, access to healthcare, for example. So, I mean, with what you are explaining is like you don't need a hospital necessarily now in the vision because you have a network. And that network should be, in my eyes, a network that should be a global standard, because that would also make people more equal and can also help everyone on Earth, no matter whether there is a hospital, like a brownfield situation, or there just isn't any, but get the same service for healthcare. So, and I think we should further pursue that vision, and in my eyes, not kind of try too much to be too narrow in, when does what come and what will it exactly be. I think we should be open, understand the challenges, and have innovations that find the solutions.
And adopt.
You started smiling when you heard Apple glasses. So did it have a special context, or are you thinking about remote diagnostics and so on?
Now it's so, Apple is not the first company that is coming up with that, and I mean, we can all recall the Google glasses where everybody said that's the next big thing, so this does not look that much different to me. So maybe now the time is matured, but I'm not quite sure, I think it remains to be seen whether this is really a product that can hit the market, so let's see.
Give it a chance, one more chance.
Yeah, give it one more chance, true, yeah. So, they will try that, and we will see what the outcome is going to be. Looking at the price of the device, and we will have to see how many people are really willing to pay X thousand euros, pounds, or whatever to purchase them, and what you can really do with that. I think that always brings me back to that discussion that we had earlier on with the innovations and with research topics, and some of them are very ambitious. But as I said, there is a lot of applications that are very narrow, very close to the market, where I think we could really enhance the current situation more, where there's a better business model. They just have not been explored and basically turned around. But I think there's a lot of potential, absolutely, you said as well. Yeah.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a full span of things that we can do today.
Yeah.
An understanding of actually what should have been done yesterday, where we didn't have the solutions, and we can combine that with the innovation power we have to actually bring the solution at the right point in time.
Absolutely. We have not spoken at all about smart pharmaceuticals, right? We are still in a time and age where we take a pill 3 times a day. We talk about precision medicine and individualized medicine. We have developments upcoming that will basically increase the demand for network capacity drastically. If you think about asthma inhalers that can be networked and connected, you have around 600 million asthma patients on this planet. You think about diabetes pens, insulin pens, you have around 600 million diabetes patients on the planet, numbers growing. Each of these patients will need or does need 2, 3 or more different medications that will all be networked. So we talking here easily about 2 billion devices. And the question is, will even 5G be ready for that? Or is this something where we will need something 5G plus, call it 6G, call it however you want? But that is again the point. So we are all basically trying to find that killer app, and it's extremely technological and so on. But nobody can answer actually the question, what would actually happen if I add 2 billion devices to the network? Is 5G capable of managing that? Yeah? Or do we need something else?
Well, I think the technology is, I would say, able to do that because it's what happens today. But what I find interesting, actually, because you made the comment that healthcare had been somewhat forgotten or so, but this is what you now describe, which I find very interesting on smart pharmaceuticals, which means like there is like millions of patients, but ideally everyone needs to be treated individually. Right? And that is the exact same challenge that Industry 4.0 had put forward like 10 years ago, said we need mass customization, meaning every individual car, in that standard German example, of course, must look different, but we still have to produce them like 100,000 times a year, which if you compare when car manufacturing had started, there is this famous saying that every car can, you can choose your color as long as it's black. I think that was the quotation that people put into the mouth of Henry Ford. And now it's like, choose your seat, choose your color, choose anything. And the car makers, of course, need and want to produce the same volumes. And I think there is very much a parallel thinking on what you are describing here on how to individually treat patients with the help of intelligence and the network at scale. When you say 600 million, that's a big number. Yeah. And I could very well imagine that the overall health situation of the society would improve if we could help, or you could help the patients actually to take the medication that is super optimized for their case and circumstances and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting enough that you mentioned that, you know, because of course you have that beneficial point to the patients, but also if you think from an economic perspective, you know, you mentioned Industry 4.0. In the health domain, this is Health 4.0. And what is the difference? Where is the transition, you know? And it brings us to the cyber-physical systems. And what does it actually mean? Yeah, it means industry transition. So the pharmaceutical industry is a classical manufacturer. Do they want to do that forever? No. They want to shift to service provision. Yeah? And this is exactly where the network comes into play. There's a big difference if I manufacture the asthma inhaler or if I have a platform or a protocol where I have a smart algorithm that predicts if I'm going to experience an asthma inhaler or not. And this is a service that I can sell. And looking at Apple, iTunes, App Store, this service might, in time, be more worth than my actual product. Yeah? And this is exactly what we're looking at. And I think this is going to happen. Not maybe in the next 5 years, but we will get there, 100%.
Interesting.
So it's going on and it's driving the industry. Is it correct? Is it also your point of view that it's a big part of digitization?
Yes, it's enabling industry digitalization. And what beside of network solutions, architectures, system integration, there's one trend I see as that customers want to do more by themselves. So they want more control, which is also valuable for their business case, for example. Most of our customers want to do the passive infrastructure by themselves. Yeah, and this is something, of course, we do another handover, etc. Or they want to control more the network by doing some parts of the operation, for example, service level 0 and 1. This is another trend beside of use cases enabling technologies. How you deploy network has changed, and it's much more collaborative than having a provider just putting the whole solution on the campus.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I give the last 7 minutes to the audience, so I don't need 7 minutes to wrap up the day. So if there are any questions to the panel, please ask them. Over there.
Thank you. My question is to Christoph. That's fascinating how perhaps behind the hospital is in its path of digitization and using technology. Is it a budget issue that they don't have the money to buy that equipment? Is it B, that these pumps and devices don't exist to be enabled and connected? Or is it regulation that says, okay, we can't have technology doing something, it has to be a human? What is the main cause of this delay of that technology entering that hospital or e-health area?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, in countries like in Germany, for example, it's certainly a budget issue. Because we are regulated in the health domain, we can do very little, the margins getting tighter and tighter for the majority of the hospitals. Private hospitals have other means, but the few private hospitals in Germany, they cannot change the market. That is not enough. My hope is actually resting on the United States and the developments in Asia. And I think we will see a very rapid development in time, because 5G, I mean, to be honest with you, we are still struggling with the modules that you could build into some kind of embedded system to put it into a pump. They are now coming, they are available, they become available. We all know about the chip situation at this point in time, so the development over the last 3 years has not helped. But I'm very confident that in time, soon, we will see the first products, maybe in 2 years' time.
Christoph, I have to ask you, do you see a chance, because I see a lot of funded projects in the healthcare, where do you see the development there? Do you see, would this, the government, the politics, support there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Cigdem. I see a lot of stuff is happening as we speak, you know. I mean, Mr. Lauterbach is presenting his ideas about reforms, right? We see changes everywhere in the regulations, especially the Gematik is pushing for data integration, interaction that could go in this way. And I feel that we, at this point in time, are actually, for the first time ever, from a technical perspective, are really in the position where we could have such a product relatively soon. Now, a medical technology company is a little bit like an oil tanker, right? So Philips, before they will start to manufacture these devices, they will want to see market opportunities and everything needs to be right. But I think we're getting there, and especially now with these regulations that are coming from the Gematik and with these new ideas about safety and security and so on, new standards and protocols, we are very close to that. So I think this is going to come. And I also hope that we will get funding support from the government, from the industries and so forth. And if this is there, product is not far.
Any more questions? Okay, so there's just one thing left to say. First of all, thank you very much. Please stay on stage for a moment. We're gonna meet each other at 6:30 downstairs and have a walk to the steamboat. The name of the steamboat is Leipzig, because we knew that there's a competition between Dresden and Leipzig, so we said, okay, let's book a steamboat that's called Leipzig in Dresden. And if you reach the pier by yourself, the boat will leave at 7 p.m., so there's no hassle. You've got your time to meet us at the boat, and I think there's maybe a Telefonica logo on the boat or something like that. So you can't miss it. You can't miss it. And if there are any questions, our team helps you at any time. So thank you very much for staying this long, staying in all these panels, and hope to see you later. Thank you so much. Thank you. Vielen Dank.